Welcome to Feed Your Wild, an immersive journey to help you remember your own medicine and awaken your intuitive healing gifts. I'm Vanessa Rodriguez, and join us for heart-centered, real conversations exploring intuition and spirituality, health and wellness, astrology, herbalism, and nature-based practices that will transform your health and life. Our mission is to inspire, empower you, and help you expand your spiritual and intuitive connection to its fullest expression so that we can build a more beautiful world together. Get ready to feed all parts of your wild self. Welcome back to the Feed Your Wild podcast. I am your host, Vanessa Rodriguez, your intuitive guide for this episode and every episode. And today, I'm super excited to talk about something that so many of my clients and my students have struggled with, have journeyed with, many have broken through, and something that is also really close to my heart because I have experienced this multiple times in my life in various points of my path. And at some point, I'm going to talk about my extended story, like the background, where I came from in terms of like from the business standpoint. I've actually had multiple businesses. I've worked in various different industries, which I don't typically talk about. You probably, if you're a listener of my podcast, you know my work more as a clinician. I'm a certified nutrition specialist, and I'm also an intuitive and a psychic and a holistic healer. So that's what my work really encompasses today is I help to support other healers in stepping out of the spiritual closet, waving their spiritual free flag, right? Expanding your intuitive healing gifts that are part of your design, discovering that, expanding that, and really getting clarity and moving forward on your soul path as a healer and getting really clear on what it is that you are here to do. Because guess what? We all have a mission that we came here with. And that's going to look very different for each person. And it might look different in different chapters of our lives, but we all have core designs and we all have these things that were sort of pre-programmed and plugged into our design on purpose, like we might have decided perhaps through our karmic journey. So thinking about all of the lives that we have lived and really the culmination of that and what we are here to do. So a lot of the work that we're here to do is actually repair work, restorative work for the entire line, for our ancestral line, for our line, our soul path as it pertains to the soul timeline. And here as a human on Earth, in Earth School, helping assist the collective, not just humanity, but also the more than human beings and allies that are here on Earth, as well as Mother Earth herself in our collective evolutionary process. So that's what we're ultimately here to do. And each of us has our own unique path in doing that. So a lot of the questions that I get as an intuitive, as a reader, when somebody comes to me for an Akashic Soul Record reading or some sort of other divinatory reading, or even when I was just doing clinical work as a nutritionist, people had this question. And that's really what allowed me to step even more into my intuitive gifts and spiritual path with this work is because so much of the physical problems and challenges and dis-ease that people were experiencing were so rooted in their emotions and emotional realm and their connection to their purpose or their lack of. Very often a sense of disconnection to their purpose and their gifts and what they were here, what they were supposed to do. And you will find that when you are out of line, when you are not on your highest path or timeline in terms of your purpose and your gifts, you will get messages. You will get by the universe, you will get pings, you will get your body. Your body holds all the wisdom you ever really need. It holds the memory of literally your entire soul life, so multiple lifetimes. It holds the memory of your ancestral field. It holds the memory of the earth because we are also earth. And it also, of course, holds the memory of the cosmos because we are fractals, fractals of fractals of fractals of fractals of the universe and the universal experience. So because we are individuated as humans and we're supposed to have this individuated experience, so the I am and my, we can get stuck in this loop of like, man, okay, I came here on earth, I was born, and now I kind of feel disconnected. And especially with our modern society and the way things are going globally, there is a disconnection, or you could say efforts, whether they're conscious or not, but efforts to keep us disconnected from our truth, from our knowing, from our gifts. We are all intuitive. We are all intuitive channels. It's literally part of our design as humans. So part of my job is here to assist you in opening that up and awakening it and remembering it. And a key piece is calling in clarity to clear out the shit that is in the way of that clarity that is actually already there. And that's the good news. Let me reel it back a little bit, okay? I'm going to share a little bit of my story. And I've mentioned like little bits of this in other episodes if you want to tune in. But 15 years ago, I remember being in a cubicle because I was working in the financial sector. I was actually in alternative investments. I know, it's like, what? I was working in that field for almost a decade. I'm older than probably what you might think I am. So I've had some years of work under my belt and multiple career changes. 15 years ago, I remember being in a cubicle, typing away on some spreadsheets, being in this world of alternative investments and the financial sector that felt like I was supposed to be there for a reason. Like now I'm understanding much more deeply like why I was there. But I definitely was tuning into the money codes, if you will, and paying attention to the world as it pertains to money and finances. So yeah, I was there for that. But I didn't know what the F I was doing there in terms of like my purpose. What was I supposed to do there? And I felt this fire in my heart and my belly that literally caused anxiety and panic. I would have these moments of such anxiety and constriction that I felt like I wanted to crawl out of my skin. Yet I felt chained to this Excel spreadsheet and this computer in this beige cubicle with men surrounding me because that sector, that financial industry is like so full of men. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing to be surrounded by men, but my vibe is like, I got more of like this feminine vibe. I needed my sisterhood and I didn't have that. And I wasn't fully connected to my intuitive gifts, to my soul path. We all know we all have it. So that there's going to be that burning desire. And even though it can burn and it can hurt, that fire is there for a reason. It's telling you, just like inflammation. So putting my clinical hat on, inflammation is fire. Fire that has a purpose. Inflammation is purposeful. It's telling you something. It's a message. Same thing that when we tune into energetic fire within us, which anxiety often is, and there's a thing in TCM called liver fire rising, where we can actually get headaches and migraine from a fire that is in our solar plexus, the liver fire coming up and moving up because it's all energy. We're energetic beings. These things can manifest in a very somatic, real, physical way. And it did so for me. I share that a lot in previous episodes. I've had whole programs on those things. For me, it really showed up in my throat, my voice, because part of what I'm here to do is actually share my voice, hence the podcast. Hello. But also my solar plexus. So I had so many digestive issues. That's part of the reason why I became a nutritionist specifically. But if you know my story, the catalyst was really my mom and her journey with breast cancer and her ultimate death due to breast cancer. Now knowing what I know and dabbing into my own ancestral work and seeing all the shit that we've had to really heal, which is a lot. We're going to be doing this until we leave this earth realm, right? So the work is never done. And I see it as like, I get to do this work. How amazing is that we get to do this? We get to bring in healing into our lineage, into our bodies and our experience. But now I understand a lot of the things that contributed to my mom's diagnosis and her physical experience of breast cancer, which also included lung cancer in the Western world and conventional medicine. You might call it metastasis. So that's when cancer spreads to different parts of your body. and it spread to her lungs and her brain. But now knowing what I know, it actually wasn't metastasis in the way that is thought of in the more conventional Western medical lens. It was very deeply rooted in her somatic and emotional and psychospiritual experience. And a lot that she was holding in terms of blocks, resistance, pain that was not being worked through and resolved. So that's just like a little tidbit for anybody who might be journeying with something that is chronic and keeps coming back, is you got to go deeper. You have to go deeper, because the physical piece is literally just the tip of the iceberg, and it's the message that's telling you something. And it's actually a really good clue. Your body is so intelligent, it's giving you like an exact clue as to what it might be. I got to save all of that for a different episode because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Today we're talking about, well, how do you come back to this clarity piece when you're feeling so disconnected from it, from your gifts, knowing your path, when you know that you're here to serve, you know that you're here to assist others, assist more globally, collective, like everybody has their own way of showing up and being of service if you are on the service path and the path of the healer, right? Like everybody's a healer. So when I talk about healer, I'm talking about self-healing, but there are people who are here to be in service of others, to assist in the self-healing of others. Because we're not meant to do everything by ourselves. We're actually meant to help one another. And there are those of us who are here where that's our primary purpose and mission. So that's one of mine. You know, we have multiple purposes. That's my belief. One of mine, as it pertains to my soul work and my business, is to be in service to others, to help assist them in not just navigating the challenges of life that they have through, but to gain clarity and to use my intuitive knowing and my voice and my power, which were the two places that I had the most struggle. So that's another key when we're thinking about clarity and lack of clarity and what are my gifts. Well, what are the places where you're having the most challenges? You can even look at physically. For me, in my life, it has always been my throat chakra. So including my mouth, my teeth, my throat, my thyroid, my voice, my larynx, my tonsils, like all of that, I've had so many issues throughout my life, especially as a child, and solar plexus, digestive issues. I will say that I also had a lot of challenges in my sacral, so a lot of reproductive stuff, not so much like fertility issues, but a lot of pain with menses and things like that. That's another story, again, that I'll save for later. But you can look at, where am I feeling like I have the most challenges, I have the most blocks, I have the most stuckness around. That's usually the place where your body is like, hello, you have to pay attention to me. We got healing to do here, because this is where you have so many of your gifts. This is where you have so many of your design is oriented to utilize those centers. Like your body is literally like blinking lights flashing. Look at me, pay attention to me. Let's do the deep work in these centers. And then everything starts to open up. So for me, for example, with my voice, it was channeling and intuitive hearing, clairaudience, listening. So that's a big part of how I receive information, is audibly, is like using my voice and channeling. Another piece is by clairsentience and cognizance. And a lot of the claircognizance pieces also, it's not just, up here in these upper channels, but it's also your solar plexus, because your solar plexus tunes into the frequencies and the energies around you. So I'm just giving a little bits and hints here. We're not going to go super deep into in this episode, but those are some clues when you're starting to ask, like, well, what are my gifts? But when you're having questions around day-to-day clarity as it pertains to your path, I'm going to share some really important information that is going to help assist you in getting out of a rut and actually stepping into a way of being where clarity just begins to reveal itself. You don't have to feel like you're doing the work to get there. But back to my story, I remember sitting in this cubicle and having the angst and the anxiety. And so I decided, well, I'm going to start talking to some psychics and intuitives and healers because those were kind of like my version of therapists. I would just go to them. And I remember this one woman telling me, tuning in, and she told me, she's like, my dear, well, first of all, you are so not grounded and rooted. You are like wanting to escape. So you're in the ethers. And that's something that you need to work on because you need to be so connected in with your body and in this experience to be present to receive that clarity. But when we're in escape mode or when we're in just sort of like hyper ethereal mode where a lot of times we want to get out of body, not consciously, but we want to escape this experience. We want to reunite with the oneness that we know that's familiar in our heart. And when we're not experiencing that here, that's a very common thing that I see, especially with people who are empathic, who are highly sensitive people, and who are highly intuitive, is that it's very common. Like up here is very comfortable above your head, but if you are not rooted in your body, then you can't access the information that you actually already have. Does that make sense? So that's one thing that she told me was you got to land back in. And there are some really beautiful practices of like, of course, earthing and rooting and things like that to do that. But the other piece was that because I was so dysregulated, my nervous system was so dysregulated and I wanted to escape and I had that level of anxiety, I would try to go to quick fixes or to use my mind. Like I literally could not escape my mind that was running on autopilot with these negative thoughts like dysregulation, that I couldn't get into a frequency, literally, of actually receiving what was already there, what was already in me, in my body. And our body is like not just physical, of course, right? It includes all of the layers, the energetics, it extends out. We hold so much in the subtle realms, and we can only access that when we attune and when we regulate. So, I would be in these moments where my inner compass, my body would scream like, this is not it, babe. There's something on the other side, but we don't know what it is. And it would manifest as fear and doubt and worry and anxiety in my experience, in my day-to-day. And I had to reframe all of that. Instead of getting anxious about, oh no, here's this feeling again. Oh my gosh, I had to slow down and reframe and see it as like, okay, my body is talking to me. My soul is talking to me. And this is all information. This is my body, my heart, my soul that is telling me, babe, it's time to remember. It's time to remember. And after 12 years of intuitive healing work, now seeing hundreds of clients, really serving thousands of students coming in through the program, I can confidently say this. Your soul always knows. 100%. You already have the answers. I can't tell you how many times I have done an intuitive reading, and then the person, after they ask the question, right? Because clearly they say they don't know. I tell them what I receive through their Akashic records, through talking to their highest self, through speaking with their spiritual guides. And after I tell them what I said or saw or sensed or received, they tell me back, I kind of already knew that, even though their original question was about that. Because what happens is we took a light and we shined a light on the thing that was already inside of them. How many times has that happened to you? How many times, if you have seen an intuitive or even just like having a conversation with somebody who's outside of like the tornado that you're in, who can acutely see what's going on and they share that with you and you're like, I already knew that. Why the heck did I feel like I needed to go to this person to gain that clarity? Because we are so mired and mixed up in our own shit that there's static. Even though it's there, we can't touch it. We can't get it in that moment. So Yes, of course. Working with others is 100% an amazing way to get support and the clarity that you need. But that's not always accessible. And we want to be able to empower ourselves to be able to tap into these fields of clarity, if you will, for ourselves, of course. Will it always work instantaneously? 100% of the time? No, because there's so many other factors related to that. But what I will say is that step number one is we have to pay attention and listen. So rather than getting swept up by the waves that come through anxiety, like the experience of panic or the fear, the escapism, all of that, we have to slow down and notice and pay attention. That was literally one of the first things that when my clairaudience really came online, this wasn't the very first thing. Actually, the very first thing that I received that I remember, because when I was little, I had a lot more of these experiences, right? But I don't necessarily remember what I heard when I was younger. And then I shut it off. And then when it came back online, this little tangent, the first time that I heard something clairaudiently more as an adult was actually a demonic voice. And that was trying to scare me away from following my path as a healer. Go figure. But yes, I was scared, very, very, very scared in that moment. But I also was like, afterward, I was like, fuck this. Like, who are you? Right? Like, clearly, if you're going to come in and try to scare me away from my path, that there's something there. So that somebody tells me not to do something, I'm going to go do it. Like, that's kind of how I am. So fortunately, unfortunately. But fortunately, I listened to my inner self and followed through. But I would say one of the more higher level consciousness soul messages that I received clairaudiently was literally I heard the words, pay attention. And there was a period of time when I heard it over and over and over and over again. I was like, who is talking to me? Who keeps saying that? And what are you talking about? Like, pay attention to what? But that's the question. It was a seed. It was a seed that sprouted this glorious cosmic question of pay attention to what is it that I need to pay attention to? And you'll find the more that you live this work, it's like you're literally living the questions. That's the point. You're living the questions, and that's how we grow and learn. So I started to pay attention, and not just pay attention, but then once oh, that's interesting, then listen. Listen closely, especially when it comes to our body, because our body is always talking to us, right? Our body is our ally. Like, we are here. I mean, we are our bodies, of course, but it's almost like you can speak to your body, and your body holds things that your conscious mind doesn't have. And the thing that follows right after that is that we have to be brave and courageous enough to follow what we've received, to follow what we've listened. Sometimes it's something that is so hard to do. Sometimes it's like you have to leave your job. You have to leave this relationship. You have to move to France. It's these things that are not, quote, logical, but that you are receiving at a soul level. And we have to be open enough and have the willingness to listen and be brave and courageous enough to actually follow the call. So that's the foundation for everything. But now I want to talk about, all right, that's great. But what if I feel like I'm still not able to tap the information? One thing that I have experienced, and I've heard so many of my clients and students experience, is that it's almost like the clarity that they're looking for is behind this foggy glass. You know, it's like, dunk, dunk, dunk. They can't get through. They can't quite see, but they know it's there. They know it's there. So how do we clear up that foggy glass and open that window to access it? Here is a super, super, super key piece, and literally everybody can do, because this is how we are wired as humans. We must learn to attune to the optimal intuitive state. And there are very specific ways that we do this. Now, I call this attunement. And in order to attune properly, To get into an optimal state of receiving intuitive guidance and connection, we must shift our vibration literally. We need to slow down our brain wave frequencies enough to access higher states of consciousness. If you're into brainwave frequencies and hypnosis and things like that, like you geek out on this stuff. So this might be review, but I love review because foundations are everything and it's good reminders. If this is totally new to you, this is game changing. Brainwave frequencies. There are 4 primary brainwave frequencies that we oscillate in between, or like our daily lives. Well, actually, there are more than 4, but we're just going to talk about 4 because it's the most relevant for this work. So I'm going to talk about the 4 most common brainwave classifications. And each of these can be broken down into frequencies that affect a different part of the consciousness and subconscious mind. We have beta. Beta is generally regarded as a normal rhythm and is the dominant rhythm in those who are alert or anxious or have their eyes open. The conscious mind is fully awake in beta. We're active, we're busy, we have active concentration. So if we're doing something like strategy, we're strategizing, we're putting things together, we're planning the 5-year plan. But this is also busy thinking, busy mind, anxious thinking. So many of us fall into this brainwave frequency by default. And we're in this totally unconsciously, right? We're in this conscious way of thinking in an unconscious way. We just sort of like go there. That tends to be the primary state for most people most of the time. And while, yes, this can be good for like planning out your groceries and grocery shopping and things like that, planning some sort of strategy, it's not the optimal state to receive intuitive information or to access your intuitive gifts or the clarity that you already have. And of course, all the other things that are available to us through this portal of the intuitive connection, such as reading soul records and tapping into universal consciousness and knowledge and wisdom, speaking with our spirit guides, things like that. That's going to be in these other brainwave frequencies because our brain is so much. There's so much to say about the brain. But part of what our brain is a receptor, emitter and receptor of frequencies, kind of like a radio. And we can attune the radio. You can change the station in multiple ways. This is like multidimensional. So we're typically in beta most of the time, if that's what you've been used to. And what I talked about before, when I was in that anxious state and I was like in this worry mind, that was the beta brainwave frequency. That's why I couldn't access the information that I already had. So this is the state that most of the brain is in when we have our eyes open and are listening and thinking during analytical problem solving, judgment, decision-making, when we're processing information about the world around us. This is called active intelligence, and there's a high alpha or low beta, so we'll get into alpha in just a moment, but our brain uses about 13 hertz for active intelligence. So these are literally waves. We're talking about waves here. Then there is alpha. Now, good, healthy alpha production promotes mental resourcefulness. This aids in our ability to mentally coordinate and enhances our overall sense of relaxation and fatigue. And in alpha state, you can move really quickly and efficiently to accomplish whatever task is at hand. Some people might call this is like flow state. When alpha predominates, then you're probably going to feel more ease and calm. Alpha is not the anxiety frequency. Alpha also appears to bridge the conscious realm to the subconscious realm. And it is the major rhythm seen in normal, relaxed adults, like when they're doing brainwave frequency testing. In relaxed adults, they see their brainwave frequency at alpha. It's present during most of the life, especially beyond the 13th year, when this is our dominant resting state. Alpha is also the first of the optimal frequencies to access intuitive information and the clarity that we have in our design, in our bodies, in our field, and any other kind of psychic information. And of course, to access the Akashic records. So when I teach my students and my clients on how to access the Akashic records, which I do, like that's in my mentorship and in my 9-month healing trainer practitioner program, the Wildly Intuitive Practitioner Pathway, I initiate you and train you on accessing the Akashic records and reading the Akashic records of others. You are only able to do this if you can access alpha and theta states. So we're going to get into theta in just a moment. Now, with alpha, there are very specific ways to access that, and I'll get into those in a moment. But we do this every day without even trying. Like all of these frequencies are natural to us. We tap into these very naturally all the time. But there are ways that we can consciously attune to these frequencies so that we can access the levels of information that are already available to us, but that we think that we can't access. That's why when I'm reading for somebody, doing an intuitive reading for somebody, and I reflect, I tap into that because I'm in alpha and theta, and then I attune and I get into these intuitive consciousness levels and I receive the information and insight. And I reflect it back to them and they're like, oh, of course, I knew that already because the foggy window has been opened, has been cleared. Plus, there's a process of attunement when you're working with somebody. I call it the intuitive calibration network effect, where when you are with somebody, and this is why it's so powerful to actually connect with people who are doing intuitive work, who are doing active like consciousness work, doing work as groups. That's why I love group work. My Wildly Intuitive Practitioner Pathway is a group program, a mentorship, because we can attune to one another and all rise together. It's phenomenal, like literally quantum leap. This is how quantum leaps happen, because we can attune one another. Now, you could say that it goes in reverse too, but there's a lot more to that I won't get into. There's like a thing called momentum and charge, and we won't get into it. I'll talk about that another time. But let's get into theta, because first we have alpha, and alpha is kind of that bridge, and we can tap into alpha with light sleep, with meditation, with relaxing thoughts, just relaxation in general. You are going to move into that state when you are falling asleep or when you're about to wake up. Like we access these all the time. So in just a moment, I'll share ways that we can consciously do that aside from meditation. Now, theta is seen in connection with creativity, intuition, daydreaming, and fantasizing. In the theta state, it's basically a repository for memories, emotions, and sensations. This is like the good stuff when we can tap into theta, right? Theta waves are strong during deep internal focus, deep meditation and prayer, and spiritual awareness. Of course, in hypnosis, we can get into theta, and that's part of what hypnosis is get in shifting our brainwave frequencies. And it reflects this, theta reflects the state between wakefulness and sleep and relates to the subconscious mind. I know you probably know this, but it's always wonderful to hear this. Most of our reality is co-created through our subconscious mind and programming, not what we consciously desire or try to do. So when we can tap into our subconscious, and I call it pruning and weeding the subconscious field and do reprogramming work, I can't tell you how much that will change and transform your life in so much more efficiently than trying to strategize your way or doing all these different like conscious mindset exercises and activities and practices to figure something out. So I don't see them as cheat codes, but you could. These are like the cheat codes. You know, like sometimes it's just like we have this available to us. Like, let's really work with the fullness, the capacity of our mind. Yeah. And like, let's get to it, because not to put a lot of pressure or urgency, but I feel like look at the world around us. We need as much of us awake and blowing through these blocks as much as possible. I know that's what I'm here for it. Now, theta is abnormal in awake adults, meaning that it's not typical for awake adults to be in theta. But it's perfectly normal and common in children from 0 to 13 years old. Now, I want to just put a pin in that because, if you've done any consciousness work or hypnosis work, you're a hypnotic therapist, you already know this. Literally, as children, we are in a hypnotic state. We are in theta from 0 to 13 years old, which means that we're already tapped in, tuned into all the things, the intuition, the memories, the emotional field, the sensations, right? Children are naturally psychic when they're young, and their brain is like open, okay? Their energetic field is open. But you're most open to all kinds of programming, whatever label you want to slap on it, quote good, quote bad. I won't put any kind of moral label on it, but it's by design so that we can learn really quickly and efficiently. So it's almost like just computer software downloading. Okay, program, like just downloading all of these programs so that you can hit the ground running as a human. And of course, a lot of us have programming that is not supportive for us, that we have to shift and upgrade. And we can only do that using theta, being in theta, going back to that. So theta is believed to reflect activity from the limbic system and the hippocampal regions. So with theta, just sort of a quick overview and review with that. I mentioned beta was around 13 hertz, like 13 to 40 hertz. Alpha is around 7 to 13 hertz. So you see we're starting to slow down. Theta is around between 4 and 7 hertz. And that's the dream state, deep meditation, hypnosis, and trance. So when we're in trance or trance channeling, that's theta. And then we have delta. And delta is below 4 hertz in terms of the brainwave frequency. This is the deep dreamless sleep and unconscious state. So if you are awake, you are not in delta and you can't access delta. It's the lowest frequency. And it's the dominant rhythm in infants up to 1 year of age. They're in a sleep state all the time, but then they're also like sleeping a lot because they're in that's purposeful. They're meant to be that way, right? It's not wrong that they're that way. And it tends to be the highest in amplitude and the slowest in waves when you're looking at it from a frequency perspective and like those brainwave frequencies. Now, we increase delta waves in order to decrease our awareness of the physical world. And we also access information in our unconscious mind through delta too. Not just a radio frequency. Our brain is like this receiver and emitter, but it's also a portal. Just like our heart is a portal and a vortex, we can access levels of consciousness that we already are inhabiting, but we're not consciously aware of, and tap into the realms and the information by shifting our brainwave frequencies. So in order to receive intuitive and psychic information and to tap into those I call clarity codes that you already have, you need to be in at least an alpha state, ideally theta. So this is why attunement is critical in any intuitive or psychic work. It is part of the process of getting your brainwave frequency to a state where you attune to the channel or station for receiving. Like I mentioned, there are many ways to attune oneself or access an alpha state. Meditation, visualization, connecting to nature, music and beats like binaural beats. There's other isochronic beats. There's many different levels of music. Drumming. This is why so many indigenous practices tapped into those shifting. They were purposeful. They were meant to shift into these altered states or alternative states of consciousness, if you will. What I just listed, those have been some of my primary methods of attunement prior to really starting any kind of intuitive reading. Now, I will say that when you have been doing this work a lot, like some people We're born literally just having more ease and flow in shifting brainwave states. Some people have a harder time doing it, and that's just the nature of things. Depends on your design. It's not good or bad, it's just what it is. But since I have been actively doing this work, it literally changes your brain so that the switch doesn't take so long. I can literally 5 minutes before an intuitive reading, drop in, connect with my breath, tune in, and I'm there. But this is after years of doing this work. Some people are born that way and can literally like journey in between. But there's a training process, and that's very specific to supporting your brain. And it's more than just building that muscle. It's literally building your capacity and the bridge for you to do that. So once you've created that bridge, it's so much faster to cross that bridge. So that's one thing to keep note of, is the importance of these practices of meditation and visualization and hypnosis and connecting to nature and to beats and to music. When we can really practice those regularly, we are literally shaping our brain to assist us to access those states more easily. So that if that's not incentive for you to, get your meditation practice on point or to really practice with your intuitive readings, I highly recommend you do that. If you remain in beta with conscious mind busy and fully engaged, it's really challenging, if not impossible, to connect to higher sources of information, to your higher self, to spirit guides, and to tap into the clarity codes that you have. The information would primarily be coming from your own thoughts, your conscious thoughts, rather than a spiritual source. So, when you feel like and find that like your mind is busy, you have to shift it. Do something to break that pattern. Shift your environment. Listen to something that you weren't listening to before, like listen to a piece of music. Earth, ground, take a shower, cold shower. Do something to disrupt the train, because it's like sometimes it feels like just like this train that's blowing through, right? We have to disrupt it in some way and then start to connect to those slower brain wave frequencies. What I did was create something for you to access alpha and theta, and to specifically access the clarity codes that you already have within you. And it's totally free because I want every single person on this freaking earth to access the gifts and the codes, the clarity that you already have. Because you are meant to move through this life and share that which is already in you. When we can decrease the amount of time that you are in worry and fear and busy mind and distraction and confusion and stuckness, and increase and maximize the time that you're here actually in flow and doing the effing work that you're here to do. Oh my gosh, that just like calms my nervous system, doesn't it, for you? So I created what's called Cosmic Clarity. It's an Akashic activation. It's a 16-minute guided Akashic meditation that will help you to get clarity on your unique sacred soul calling as a healer. I created this during Mercury Cazimi. For those of you who don't know, that means that the sun and Mercury were together. So the sun was like charging up that Mercury energy. And Mercury is all about communication and the mind, and it's the healer archetype as well. It's the channel, literally the messenger between realms. So I channeled this in during Mercury Cazimi and recorded it and tapped into the Akashic realm while doing so. And so there's also Akashic healing and energetic healing. We're clearing certain centers and fields, because what I mentioned in the very beginning, sometimes we just have so much freaking clutter in our bodies, in our minds, in our field that we can't get to. It's like too much static to actually hear what is already there, what's speaking to us, what's available to us. So this Akashic activation is part energetic clearing, it's part Akashic healing, and it's also connecting you to the clarity that you already have. And one thing that this is a 16-minute audio, one thing that it does is it shifts you from beta to alpha and theta very quickly. So download it. It is free. You can find it at wildlyrooted.com/clarity or click the links that are in the show notes. And please, please, please drop me a line, DM me, tag me at wildlyrooted. I'm on Instagram. Let me know the clarity that you have received, your experience with this. And it might take a few times. I would say with this, use it daily for accelerated results. Release attachment to outcome, because sometimes we, again, through our conscious mind, we think we want something, we have this desire, we want it right now, right? That's sort of the nature, or at least right now, with instant gratification of humans. But I encourage you to just stay open and willing to receive and committed, and do it daily for a week and see what opens up for you. It's so subtle sometimes. It's so subtle, but keep a journal while you're working through this and receive the information. I would love to know if you've already tuned in and what results you are getting. So wildlyrooted.com/clarity. Download that 16-minute Akashic activation, Cosmic Clarity, and I'm sending you all the love and blessings in this really beautiful, auspicious time to connect with your gifts and your path as a healer. All right, y'all, that's the end of this episode. Can't wait to tune in to our next moon musing, and I will talk to you then. Be well.